Balcony DAO is bringing real-world assets, real-world real estate on-chain as NFTs. And this is a critical distinction. I think that if you look back at Web2 and who kind of won Web2, I think you can make the case that Amazon, for example, was an outsized winner of the original technology. And I think the reason was because they leveraged the technology to create a new type of modality. And real estate at the moment is sort of plagued by a situation where people are using the existing technology, which are ERC-20s, to build products that don't really suit the asset class. We're trying to use the existing blockchain and NFT technology to actually enhance these assets and change the consumer's experience when they invest. And so critically, what we're doing is building an ecosystem that allows for these transactions to take place, to be fractionalized, and to add increased value to these assets. This is our stack. This is the world that we live in. We've got three tools. We've got the blockchain, we've got NFTs, and we have marketplaces. Combining these in the correct way unlocks the actual value of real estate. And so importantly, the blockchain is being asked right now to do way more heavy lifting than it's actually capable of providing. The blockchain is a primitive technology. It doesn't hold real data. All it is a trust machine. The blockchain allows us to know that if somebody says something happened, it's there, it's on an immutable ledger, it's accurate, and we can automate transactions with it, right? So that is the benefit of the blockchain, full stop. An ERC-20 token that's used to transact real estate on the blockchain by itself isn't sufficient to get us to where we want to go. We've created the reNFT to accomplish that task. And this is a piece of proprietary technology. And it expands the actual metadata that lives within the NFT. And this is the secret sauce. This is the whole thing for us. If you want real estate to be liquid, it has to be transparent. And if you want it to be transparent, it has to have all the data, all of it. The existing NFT technologies are incredibly limited. You can't really put a large amount of metadata on chain in a way that's efficient for gas, or frankly fits. It just doesn't work, right? If you've ever actually minted a 721 or an 1155, you're familiar with these limitations. And so we have created a schema to solve that problem. Here's our schema, right? This is a snapshot of what this looks like. So as an LP, you have a very limited amount of data on the transactions you're making. You're essentially trusting your GP to do a deal. You also have to know your GP. You know your GP. Most of the world knows no GPs. 1% of the world gets access to these deals. If we want the 99% of the world to invest in them, and we have the legal frameworks now with Reg A, Reg A+, and Reg CF to actually increase subscribers into this asset class, we have to give them the data that they're accustomed to getting. This schema is very similar to what you might see if you minted a Bored Ape, for example, right? It gives you some number of parameters, some number of attributes on that particular asset that you're buying, but they're pretty limited, right? There's like maybe 9 different variables. This is a small sample of the amount of metadata that we're putting into the reNFT to provide that level of visibility. And so what you have is these structs that include the lease expiration, the base rent, the escalations, the termination date, if they're in default. But instead of having 9 or so different attributes, we will have thousands upon thousands of these attributes. And through the protocol that we're developing, we'll be able to parse that data, and investors can see in real time all of the data on the transactions that they're investing in. They can see when rent was paid. And this completely changes the asset class, because instead of having, for example, public companies where you get this data every 90 odd days, you'll get this every second. And this creates infinitely more data points along the trade vector for people to say, you know what, this tenant didn't pay their rent on the first of the month. I think there's weakness there. I don't like the credit anymore. You trade out of it. To do this, you need to build a community. You need to trade into something. Here's your new community, guys. Warren Buffett's now a buffoon. Get used to the new world. It's very strange. But this is the reality. And the community, if we're honest about it, is our liquidity. And that's fine. We could be honest about it. We could say, you're providing an incredibly valuable service. You guys are creating demand. You're creating a liquidity pool for people to trade in and out of, and you're being rewarded for that. And you're being rewarded because the asset values that we're describing are enhanced by this transparency, right? If you have two assets, two identical theoretical assets, one of them is completely opaque and the other one's entirely transparent, same net operating income, which one are you more likely to invest in? You're going to pick the transparent one. It will create compressed cap rates for these types of assets, and these participants in our community will benefit from that. But we're being honest about it, and that's not all that they're doing. Our community is also our tenants. Our community is also the brokers that bring us these transactions. There are other GPs that can help capitalize them. And these deals get capitalized in a sub-DAO system that we've created, which effectively acts as SPVs. So any given building is its own sub-DAO. And within that sub-DAO, you have protocols for governance, for voting, for electing who the management company is, for sourcing or defining refinance and liquidity events. All of these things happen within this space. And I think what's important in understanding this is, you look at these pictures and you think this is silly stuff. These are silly kids doing ridiculous things. But they're not. These are sophisticated investors who happen to be investing in unsophisticated products. And we believe that when we provide them with access to this data that they've never had access to, the best traders in the real estate space are going to be these guys, which is staggering to think. So at the moment, we've got quite a bit of a pipeline. We've got about $1 billion of assets online here. And these are all sort of core assets, right? They're in New York City, they're in New Jersey, substantial size assets. This is the first one that we're coming out with. So this property is 23rd Avenue. This is a 31-unit out-of-the-ground development project in Long Branch, New Jersey. And we're bringing this out probably in September. And this will be the first use case for the reNFT. So what are we going to put on chain? We're going to have the construction cost, the permits, the sign-offs, the traditional finance lender, the terms of that mortgage agreement, the entire cap table. All of this data is going to be inside of this asset and available in real time for fractionalized ownership and trading into what will become our marketplace. Candidly, if we could not build our own marketplace, we would, but there simply isn't a marketplace right now that handles this amount of data and handles NFTs. They're typically built for ERC20s or traditional stocks, and that's not this. This is sort of a giant data payload that lives inside of this tool that we've built. So I'm going to pause it right there and kind of open the floor to questions. I'm sure.
Explain to me the relationship between the sponsor of this construction project and the DAO and your organization.
Great. So the DAO has been sort of abused as a term. This is real estate. There is no decentralization in real estate. It exists in the meat space. It's in one place. We have regulations to follow for securities. We have regulations to follow for condo offerings. We have regulations to follow for a million different things, highly regulated space. And so the DAO itself, Balcony, as it exists, doesn't have some voting protocol where people can just make decisions that create a vicarious liability, which I would never want to assume. Inside of the DAO, each one of these assets has a sub-DAO. This asset will have its own sub-DAO. Those two gentlemen right there are the sponsors, also my partners on Balcony DAO. They will create a governance protocol that explains how you can participate as a voter in this DAO. And it'll be limited because at the end of the day, you want those two guys to have liability for their work product if you're an intelligent investor. And so there's certain groups that are attempting to do this, and they want to democratize and decentralize this completely, and I think that's completely foolish. And we're not doing that, and we're explicit about it with our members.
So, with respect to how you're going to raise capital for this, you're going to do it through NFTs that you're taking a position is a security.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you asked that. So, firstly, we have securities frameworks to offer real estate as securities, people just try to ignore them because they're inconvenient and expensive. So if you drop $1 million, you can actually offer these securities in a compliant fashion, which we're doing, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're not offering them through traditional verticals. We're offering them for anybody, but in particular, we're enabling crypto investors to get out of monkey pictures and buy real assets with their crypto. You're still going to be able to purchase this through a Reg D offering. You could purchase this with cash, with fiat, God forbid. You could use the United States dollar to purchase these. But what's different about our offering is we're tailoring it for this sort of multi-denomination, multi-community type of acquisition. And so if you look at all of our sort of marketing and the artwork around it, we're not marketing this to institutional investors because that guy to your right can buy all the real estate he wants, and he's not living in this world. But he'll still buy through this world because he doesn't care. He doesn't care if there's monkey pictures or not. What he cares about is what's the cap rate, what's the underlying asset, what's the quality of the sponsorship, what's the quality of the bricks, and is it actually liquid, right? And do I get the data that I want? Those are the things that are adding value.
Are the sub-DAOs, is it series LLCs or LPs or PPs, or how are you structuring the organization? What is the organization structure?
Yeah, so we're working out which DAO structure we want to use for Balcony. At the moment, it's an LLC, and it's a 4-member LLC. We've just finished a cap table, so that'll change. The sub-DAOs will individually probably be, they could be Wyoming, they could be Marshall Islands DAO, which is a great DAO structure that I like. They could be in Liechtenstein. I mean, frankly, we're unconcerned with the legal structure insofar as where it's domiciled. We're more concerned with it being explicit to the members and for the investors to be accepting of whatever that structure is, right? So some investors may not want to invest in a jurisdiction across the world. And that'll be a sponsor level decision.
Just to follow up, it sounds like you've done your research on those. I mean, do you think that investigation of it is really relevant versus, like, for your purposes and the way you want to structure the sub-DAO and treat it as securities, could you use domestic structures, create DAO or LLCs for those?
Do you mind if I sidebar that? Because I truly promise today we're going to end. And just 10 minutes away, I'm sure John is going to stick around because it's a very interesting and deeper question. I don't think we're going to cover it in like 10 seconds I have left in my time.
The answer is yes. As long as we could bring it on chain, the answer is yes. We can use analyses.